You're listening to the Primal Happiness Show, a podcast dedicated to helping you thrive in this crazy modern world. Every Tuesday, we explore the nature of how our minds really work, what exactly the human animal requires to thrive, and how we can live happier and more fulfilling lives. If you're new here and haven't yet taken our free class, then there's no better place to get a jump start on reclaiming your primal happiness. It's where we'll guide you step by step through our antidote to today's modern world. Simply head on over to primalhappiness.co/antidote to get the free class and discover how to thrive without having to move to a planet that's not so crazy as ours. But now, your host, Lian Brook-Tyler.
Hello, my beautiful people. A huge warm welcome back to the show. In today's crazy modern world, men and women are living shallow, disconnected, and unfulfilling lives. So we created the path for those who are ready to reclaim their primal power and actualize their deepest gifts. As I mentioned last week, both Waking the Wild Feminine and Waking the Wild Masculine have sold out. We began with the first circles of both of them this Monday, and oh my goodness, they were so magical and powerful. This work always blows me away, and goodness me, it's the gift that just keeps on giving. It really is. So if you're a woman and you missed out on joining this Waking the Wild Feminine, then I've got something very special for you coming up in May. It's called Unraveling the Body, and it's a brand new crucible of wild awakening for women in which we'll unravel the mysteries, freedom, and gifts of your body. It's for those of you who missed out on Wake the Wild Feminine this time, weren't feeling ready for whatever reason, including cost, time zones, or maybe the fear of sharing your personal stuff in circle. I do hear that one a lot. It won't require you to share all your deepest secrets like Wake the Wild Feminine. And the style and timing of the sessions means it should work for you, whichever time zone you're in. So this is what we'll be unraveling together. The mysteries of your intuitive wisdom. Discover and trust in your body's deep knowing. The knots and binds of conditioning and shame. Reclaim the freedom to be a celebration of your essence. The gifts of your body's bounteousness. Uncover, embody, and express your radiant magnetic power. So women, if you're feeling your body calling for that unraveling, please do go check out all the juicy details now. And they're at primalhappiness.co/unravel. That's unravel with one L. Can't wait to see you in May in that first session. And now for this week's show. This episode is our monthly show called All the Everything, and it's where I jam on an eclectic mix of topics. It also airs live on Facebook on the first Friday of every month at 10 a.m. GMT. So this is where you can get up close and personal with me, get inside my head, and hear what I've been up to over the last month. So in this episode, I shared what I've been creating and consuming in the past month. And then I dive deep into the topic, why rewilding is the path of the soul. This was the winning topic in the poll in our Facebook group, and it's actually one of my favourite topics too. So I'm hoping it will also hit the spot for you. Let's jump in. Hello and welcome to this month's All the Everything. And I feel like I have got so much to share this month. It's not like I'm usually scratching around other months, but this does feel like, I don't know, 2020 has just felt like an avalanche in a really good way. And it's one that just doesn't seem to be stopping. So I've had to really pick and choose what I'm going to share with you this month in terms of the stuff I've been up to. And feeling like I'm having to sort of choose between my favourite children, really, because there has been so much. So as ever, I'm going to jump into what I've been consuming, creating over the past month before I then dive into the kind of main topic, as it were, why rewilding is the path of the soul. So we'll start with what I've been consuming. And as ever, I've been reading tons and tons of books. What I tend to do, I've probably shared this before, but I primarily read on my Kindle, and I will download samples as either people recommend them or they've kind of come into my awareness via various means, particularly if I have the same book come into my awareness more than once in a short period. I'll kind of take that as a sign from the divine to check it out. And so I will probably in any given week have read lots of samples, and then have decided before I then get to the point of buying the thing that actually I'm not really feeling it. So I often will have read loads, and then when I try and remember like which are the ones I actually completed, I have to go back and look at my Kindle because there would have been so many. Anyway, this month, I've read actually more than ever. And it's kind of odd to reflect on that, given I've also created more than ever. Then maybe there's some relationship there, but hey. So the two that I want to share with you that I have actually either completed or I'm partway through, but digging, are one book called The Evolved Masculine by a chap called Destin. I actually don't know how to pronounce his name, but it's Gerrick or Jerrick. I'm guessing Jerrick. I don't know. And his work's all around, I guess, the masculine reconnecting into, or as a combination, I guess, reconnecting and also expanding into what you could call that healthy masculine, mature masculine. He calls it the evolved masculine. And it's in large part, I'd say, fairly aligned with our work. He has his obviously own take on it, his own path. But there was a lot in there that I could really see was in alignment with our work. And it's just a really, really great story. He really shares his own stuff in a very generous way, actually. So I haven't actually finished that one, but I'm kind of enough. I'm probably about halfway through, and I'm happy at this point to say I'd recommend particularly. I mean, I'm happy to read books that are for men and for women because, hey, it's of interest to me, but it probably isn't of interest to most women. But if you're a man listening, I would go check that out. The other book that I really loved this month, and it felt very timely, the way it was quite I won't bore you with how it came into my awareness, but it was quite a random way as well. And it's called Hacking the Afterlife, but it's by a film director called Richard Martini. And he's a kind of normal, as it were, like his original, let's say, focus was nothing to do with the afterlife. He was just kind of a normal film director. And then he got interested in the afterlife. So past lives, but primarily more that what you could call the lives between lives or spirit, I suppose, and has ended up writing books and also doing a documentary on this. I haven't actually watched the documentary yet. I must do that. And I don't think the one that I read was the first book. It just was the one that I happened to be recommended. And it really took me back right to the start of my journey, where about a week after I lost my father, which you've probably, if you've listened to this show over the years, you've probably heard me refer to the story that my father suddenly dying was really the kind of catalyst, I guess, for I never know what to call it. It was very much a kind of rupture, descent, awakening, all in one. And the book I read then is called Journey of Souls. And the name of the author escapes me. I think it's Michael something. I'll put it in the show notes afterwards. But that book, oh my goodness, it really was a heaven-sent book. I really don't know. I guess it's hard to ever say, would my path have gone the way it did without that? Because I guess that was meant to be. But that was a really significant part of my path, and seeing there was something beyond this, I guess, surface level material world, upset, drama, loss, anger, all the things that were happening here in this kind of material plane, as it were, this book really helped me connect into something that I was feeling, but was really hard, was challenged to, I guess, understand in any sort of tangible way. So that was the book I read then. This book, and so sorry if this is the timelines are confusing. So that was the book I read back in Journey of Souls, was the book I read back in 2012. And then this book that I've just read, Hacking the Afterlife, was on the exact same topic. And it didn't really say anything new. It was just, I guess, compounding and also returning me back to something that had such a profound effect on me then. And I often notice this, not just in myself, but also with my clients who I'm kind of so intimately aware of their journeys and what's in their awareness. And I just see this over and over again, the way we sort of cycle back to things that are meant for us. And we'll never be we'll never be the same person. Therefore, we're never experiencing it in the same way. But there's something so profound and powerful when we get those opportunities to circle back and then see with new eyes something that was important to us however many years ago. So for me, it's the more I've been on this path of the soul, the more I've started to see that as we're saying yes to that, whether you want to call it a higher self, deeper self, the more that I see that spirit, and again, whatever word you want to use for spirit, God, the universe, the divine, whatever, could even be whatever, the more spirit provides. So we say yes to our soul and spirit says yes to us. And I'm seeing that all over the place at the moment. So for me, it was such a wonderful way of making sense of, and it's not that we have to make sense of it, but given this is my work and I am going to be talking and sharing about these concepts, it's really helpful for me to be able to make contact with these things in a way that I can actually articulate. So without going into like huge detail about the book, because I would recommend go read that or Journey of Souls, whichever one appeals to you. It was a gorgeous reminder of the way that we can be in these bodies, these beautiful, soft animals, these bodies that we came here to be in, and have this unique magic, this soul magic, and be not even connected, but part of something bigger. There's a bigger picture at play, a bigger force at play. And it was just a really beautiful reminder of that. So if that feels like it's something that would be helpful to you, again, I'd recommend either of the two books I've said. And the other one would be, Many Lives, Many Masters. Very similar topic and way of looking at these things. That's probably a little bit more focused. In fact, probably a lot more focused actually on past lives rather than the afterlife. But yeah. Right, let me take a breather. And let's get into what I've been creating over the last month. And oh my goodness, it has been a month where my creative energy has just been flowing through like nothing I've known. I'm generally someone who has that to quite a large extent anyway, but this month has just been something else. And I was thinking, am I lucky that I've got so many outlets for that? Or is that because I've created so many outlets for it? I don't know. But either way, I was reflecting like, wow, I've got all these different ways I can kind of channel this creation that seems to be coming through me at the moment. And so that includes, I'll go into some of these in a little bit more depth in a moment, but that includes Waking Wild Feminine, which starts on Monday. It includes Unraveling the Body, which I'll talk about in a moment. It includes the monthly column I write for our wonderful local newspaper, The Independent, and of course, many other ways. So it has been a kind of like, oh, this is an idea, or I've seen this, like, where can that go? And often it can go in many places because obviously it all comes from the same, I guess, that all those different creations come back to a kind of single point of alignment. And it was interesting. And I think this was chance. I don't think I even picked this, that my topic for the Independent this month was actually on creativity and the power of creativity to reconnect us to that kind of wild, unique magic that each of us are. So that was just, so beautifully timed, as this is kind of this creative energy just seems to be bubbling through me to like a ridiculous extent at the moment. And then the thing I really want to talk to you about, and I'll talk a bit more probably at the end of this as well, is unraveling the body, and how that came about was just so gorgeous. So if you've been following this for a while, you'll know that Jonathan and I have both been enrolling for Wake the Wild Feminine and Wake the Wild Masculine over the last month or so. They both start on Monday, and they are circles for men for Wake the Wild Masculine, women, Wake the Wild Feminine, where we go really, really deep into, ways to awaken that wildness, awaken to the wild feminine or to the wild masculine. And what I was seeing come, and this was a couple of weeks ago that actually it sold out, it was kind of way before the circle was due to start, was that it sold out. And then I had women still contact me asking me, are there any places? And there weren't, because I strictly limit this so that we can make this as intimate as possible. It doesn't interest me to say, oh yes, come join us, because it would really lose that magic, which is the creating that beautifully safe, intimate space where we can really bare our souls is such a necessary part of the work. So it closed. I was turning women away. And then a combination of that and also reasons that women were saying they couldn't join us, which were a combination of either the time zones didn't work for them, that the investment, the size of the investment wasn't possible for them, or, and I heard this a number of times, that they just didn't feel ready to kind of share all that personal stuff in that way. They just felt like, oh, that feels at the moment like I'm just not ready to go there. So all of that suddenly gave me this idea. What if I created something for those women where the kind of numbers didn't need to be so capped, because the idea wouldn't be that we're going so intimately, but it gave a really powerful first step along this journey of rewilding ourselves, connecting into our bodies. And so that was kind of, where are we? I think it was Saturday week, as in going backwards. And the response I got to me just saying, I'm thinking of this, made me realize like, oh yeah, this feels like it wants to be a thing. And the ideas from that point onwards just came thick and fast until it became really clear, okay, this is going to be all about the body and unraveling those kind of knots and binds, unraveling. And we love the word, Jonathan and I sort of came to this word unraveling with the idea that it can be used in multiple ways, kind of unraveling a puzzle, unraveling kind of these like ties and knots, and also unraveling a gift. And so that's how what we saw was really powerful in this work and what was possible. And so that was Saturday I had the idea. And then I think I actually, I released it, like opened it for enrollment less than a week later. So it was on the Friday. And so that was last Friday. And already every day, I think, women have been enrolling. It's just been such a gorgeous testament to the power of seeing what wants to be created, like getting out of the way, your own mind's kind of like idea of what needs to happen or what you want to happen, really just recognizing like what wants to be created. And also and this constantly surprises me. I think I must be someone that's a bit slow on the uptake, but I just feel amazed over and over again that there's a demand for this work. Honestly, and I spoke about this on the podcast this week as I was recording the intro, it blows my mind that something that I thought would be for quite, women who are kind of like, I guess already quite out there, if that makes sense. They were already kind of really walking their own paths and quite a way along this, I guess, rewilding in one way or another. I thought there's probably hardly any women who are going to be drawn to this. And actually, it's turned out to be the opposite. I feel like there's something in this work, something in these words that actually calls to many women. Doesn't mean every woman's going to act on it, but I can see there is something that really is here for almost every woman, at least. So this has been just such a delight to create. I can't wait until we actually get to the point of embarking on the journey itself, which starts, I can't remember the date. I'm not one that remembers dates very well. It starts at the beginning of May, or maybe the middle of May, somewhere in May. If you check out the show notes afterwards, there'll be a link there, so you'll be able to see. And the wonderful thing about this, it's not, you don't have to come to the calls live or the sessions live. It's better if you can, but it's not essential. So, and the calls are also they kind of alternate, one in the day, one in the evening. So it should work for quite a range of people around the world. And it doesn't require that you really go deep and kind of share your truth. It's much a lighter step and yet very powerful. So yeah, can't wait. And that's definitely been one of my very favourite creations this month. Okay, let me take a breather again, and then we'll dive into the main topic. Okay, so this topic, and I'm saying this for my sister's sake, lately I've been asking in our Facebook group what you would like me to talk about in the coming All the Everything. And I do a little poll and then the members vote. And last month, I chose the option that was kind of second place, as it were, rather than the one that was in first place. And sort of made a joke about kind of like, I do listen, but I also will listen to what I want. And so my sister, knowing me very well, made a joke about that. And this month, to prove to her, sometimes I do just listen to what people want. I am doing the number one voted topic, which at the time I hadn't really thought too much about the title. So I think I called it something like Why Rewild. So that's the kind of deeper message here. But because I like to come up with something that sounds a bit of a sort of juicier title, I've gone with Why Rewilding is the Path of the Soul. Yeah, so that felt like it kind of answered the why. Well, I will be answering the why rewild question, but also linking it into there's something deeper here at play, which I believe that even if we're not yet aware of it, all of us really want that. We all really want to be walking that path of the soul. That's my assertion anyway. You can disagree. Okay, so let's dive in. And I'll also say this is very timely because we're very recently, going to have a big rebirth of our website and our brand. And we're going to be much more clear and aligned in everything we do and how it ties back to this underlying theme of wildness. So this is really timely because that's going to happen. Fingers crossed. I feel like I've been saying this forever. But yes, it should all be out there in the world very, very soon. And this is a really good place for me to kind of like lay out our stall and explain why it's all about wildness. So I believe we come into this world wild. Our souls are wild, as in they're not conditioned and domesticated and kind of in boxes or told they need to be a certain way. There's a real, I see, sort of freedom and sovereignty that's, I feel, is true when it comes to us as souls. We are wild. We then come into this human form as a baby. And even in that human form, as a baby, we are still wild. We, at this point, haven't soaked up those kind of messages and experiences that will condition and domesticate us. And of course, if we were born into a different culture, a culture that still lived in an Indigenous way, we would stay wild. But of course, for most of us, we're in this modern culture. I'm sure if you're listening to this, you live in this modern culture just as I do. And bit by bit, we become tame. We learn how to be in this world in a way that's acceptable and keeps us safe. And, largely that works. And we give up something really valuable in the process. And this shows up in so many ways. And I could spend the whole show going deep on all of these, and I won't because we don't have time. But if we look at all of these areas, we can so see the difference between how we'd be if we were wild and how we are when we're tame, when it comes to how we educate our children, how we learn. And if we look at a culture who, again, is still living in a more Indigenous way, or even, we don't even necessarily need to go to, I'm going to say that extreme. I don't see it as an extreme, but extreme when we compare it to how most of us are. Even if we look at children who've been raised in a more wild, unschooled way, compared to most of us where we went to school and sat in classrooms and were told what to learn, there's a real difference there. And again, without going into kind of a big one here, when we actually look at outcomes and sort of markers of well-being, it's clear there's real, not just benefits in a kind of wilder way of being raised and learning, but there is something that really honors that uniqueness, that unique magic that we are. It doesn't then educate that out of us in the same way as it often is the case when we've gone through a kind of mainstream schooling system. This is also, this kind of tame versus wild can also be seen as we go through those kind of initiations. So whether that be puberty, for women, the way we experience our menstrual cycle, huge difference. I mean, that on its own, how a woman relates and experiences her menstrual cycle alone, on its own, I've seen can make a fundamental difference to her well-being and happiness. That one thing on its own. But we can then look at things like pregnancy, how we parent. So I don't just mean education, but just in terms of our relationship to our children and decisions we'll make, how we then travel through menopause, our relationship to aging. It really does show up in every place in our lives. And of course, because most of us don't have that comparison, we've, again, right from very early on, been conditioned and domesticated. We only have the tamer model, as it were, this model that everyone else is following of this is how it's done, these are where the problems are, this is what to expect. We don't know there's anything different. We don't recognize there is this wild intelligence of our soul and our body that's available to us. So this is, I think, one of those probably, so I'll talk for me personally. This was, I think, one of the greatest realizations of my life, most profound realizations of my life. And I say that as someone who probably had a much more wild upbringing than most. I've spoken about this in the past on the show. I was raised by a father who was much more in touch with his wildness than most adults were. We spent lots of time traveling. We lived for a whole year under the stars, like literally under the stars. At some points we had a tent or kind of some kind of makeshift shelter. Sometimes we had none. We were literally under the stars. Even though in that year I didn't go to school, other times I went to a mainstream school, because my father's attitude to education and to parenting and to life in general was coming from a very kind of keep in touch with that uniqueness, that wildness. It wasn't like I was under any pressure to conform or to fit into that schooling system. So I retained a degree of wildness that to an extent. And I think that changed radically as a teenager, which is something perhaps I'll share more on. And I'm actually seeing more about that really recently, i.e. this week, but that's probably something I'll share in future shows. But so I say this, recognition of our inherent innate wildness that we can reclaim. This has been one of the greatest realizations of my life, despite having a childhood that was wilder than most. So that's how profound I think that can be. So let me just take a break. This is one of those topics that I can be very passionate about and get overexcited and just ramble and babble. So I'm just trying to keep myself like slow and mindful and a bit more measured. So you've got some hope of following me. So why is this an issue? Why, the world appears to be working fairly well. You're here and have stayed safe and alive and are able to access technology and listen to this show. So why am I saying this domestication, this taming is an issue? And this, I think, shows up in several ways. The first one is, and I think in some ways it's the most fundamental, and then it kind of ripples into these other ways that I'm talking about, which is our ability to follow our soul path is very restricted when we're operating in this kind of tame box, this way of being that has been conditioned into us as like, this is the way. It's very difficult to understand our own unique gift and be our own unique gift when we're trying to fit into someone else's model of how to be. So that fundamentally, I see as the biggest issue, the biggest challenge here. This then ripples out into something else that I see, and this is less, I guess, deep than this whole thing about following our soul path, but really just as fundamental, which is we lose trust in ourselves. We lose trust in our own wisdom, our own intuition, our own sense of what we value, what we desire. We place this kind of false safety above living a meaningful life. When I say false safety, we can get very snagged on, again, our culture's version of kind of what staying safe and secure looks like versus what really is going to be a meaningful life, but also one that, I believe this over and over again. Sorry, I believe this over and over again. I see this over and over again. When we are able to live from this place, we have deep, deep trust in ourselves. It actually provides a level of safety and security that really trumps that one that with that kind of model that we had previously that we felt kept us safe. And then the, I guess, ripple effect of that is because we lack that trust in ourselves, we then think, well, if something doesn't feel like it's working, or I want to get from A to B, I need to look out there for answers instead of looking inside for answers. And again, I'm sure you'll see lots and lots of examples of this in your life. But what I see over and over again, and when I say this stuff, I don't mean this judgmentally as in I'm over here really smug and I'm immune from this. I've probably done almost everything I'm about to list myself. And I've certainly seen it show up with friends and clients and family. But this idea of looking outside for answers rather than trusting ourselves enough to look inside for answers shows up in things like the products we choose to use, the food we eat, the source of the food we eat, how we relate to those natural cycles. So I mentioned the menstrual cycle, but also things like our circadian rhythms, and those wider life cycles, how we relate to the seasons out in the natural world, the environments we choose to spend time in. So we'll think that, I don't know, in order to be successful, we need to be in offices staring at computers most of the time versus recognizing that really our habitat is the wild and making the choice to spend more time there. And then fundamentally, the way we choose to live, how we look out there for answers as to the right way to live versus looking inside to what we really value. So we can see this in the way that we might experience menopause, for example. And I'm saying this again, I'm not at that stage yet, but I've spent a lot of time talking to women and understanding the experience can be very difficult, very painful. And I've also heard from women who have cycled through menopause in a wilder way, really listening and aligning to what their body wants, rather than this kind of the outside culture saying, medicate it, take hormones, see if we can quieten the body, rather than seeing if we can go inwards even more deeply and listen and align. So these are all things that don't appear to be an issue until we start to get symptoms that are related to those choices we're making, which really ultimately come from that, not even inability, but that conditioning to look outside for answers versus inside for answers. Let me just ponder whether there's anything else I want to say on that before I move on. I think really what's just occurred to me is the compounding effect of this. The further we've moved away from that innate, wild intelligence, the further we'll move away. As an example, really just my almost lucky happenstance, I think more than any real logical decision. I mean, maybe there was intuition involved, I don't know. But I've never really been someone who likes taking any pain relief. And just to be clear, I've experienced quite a lot of pain in my life in various ways. I had 15 years of chronic facial pain. I've also had, various accidents, broken bones, all sorts. And I've always done what I can to take little to no pain relief. And that seems like a kind of like quite a simple surface level decision. But whether we choose to sort of be present with the way our body's talking and in that moment pain, then will impact decisions we make on top of that. So if we're medicating so we can't feel the pain, decisions we'll make from that place are coming from a very different foundation from being in the pain, listening and making decisions from that foundation. And I could give so many other examples, but this sort of layering effect of sort of domesticated decisions we're making compound each other. And so each decision we make on top of that kind of domesticated foundation grows more in terms of impact, but also I think the returning to that kind of wild intelligence becomes, I don't know if it's ever more challenging, but I guess we become less and less able to listen to the call of the wild, pulling us back to that innate wisdom. And I also strongly believe it's never too late. Again, I see this over and over with the women I work with, and I'm talking about women primarily because most of my clients are women. But everything I'm saying here applies equally to men, absolutely equally to men. And it really isn't too late. I think anytime we start to get a nudge, whether that be, you listening to this show is the first time that you've started to feel that pull of the wild, whether it be a book you've read, a quote you've said that you've heard, a conversation with a friend, I think even just you hearing that is that kind of very first but important step that's going to make it possible for you to reclaim that wildness. I honestly think it can be that simple and that it's never too late. So how do we change this? How do we free ourselves from the domestication and return to our wildness? And this is where it gets really juicy, I believe. So I did a show a few months back that talked about our inner and outer wildness. And I will link to this because I think that gives quite a nice foundation to these two different ways of seeing it. So when I talk about outer wildness, that includes the body, and it also includes the environment around us. So nature, other beings, and again, our body, that kind of container of our soul. And looking at ways that we can get back to being in a wilder way, in wilder relationship to our body, the wild out there, and to other beings. And first and foremost, just really making that declaration, that commitment to do so on its own has real power. To even have that vision of, I want to reclaim that outer wildness on its own, will start to change things. Can be as simple as adopting a nature spot where you'll go regularly, hopefully daily, but maybe a few times a week, and go to this same spot in nature and sorry, my throat's gone croaky. Going to that same spot in nature and just being aware of what you're surrounded by, the fact that it's kind of made of the same stuff as you. Ultimately you are a wild being. You're an animal who is in their natural habitat. So just allowing yourself to kind of soak into that environment that you're made of, and to be aware of those beings that are surrounding you. When I say beings, that could be plant beings, that could be animal beings, and just being in relationship, in communion to those beings in all the ways we can be. And something I just see is so powerful and really simple is the way that starts to give us a deep awareness of that natural calendar, the cycles of the seasons and what happens within each season. When we return into the same place or same places, we really become aware of that. And there's something so activating and also reassuring to start to see this beautiful natural cycle play out perfectly over and over again. So this ripples out in all sorts of ways, but I think ultimately the starting point is to reclaim that connection to the outer wildness. And again, when I use the word connection, it almost sounds like there is a separation. There is no separation, but it can feel like it when we're physically separate to it. So really, it's about putting ourselves back in communion with that which we are. And that then I find ripples out really naturally into the choices we make, the food we eat, the type of water we drink, the products we use, all kinds of things seem to ripple very naturally from that place without necessarily even needing to make these. Again, I think sometimes, and I'm not making this wrong at all, I think anything in this direction is great, but for example, the way that we approach the environment, like as in the way that we'll talk about the environment, can be very externally led. We get messages out there about kind of, plastic and carbon emissions and things like that. And then we make choices taking that information and like, okay, how can I install that in my life? And I'm not making that wrong. Like, hey, I think anything in this direction is helpful, but there is something that seems to ripple up from inwards once we start to make that deep connection with the wild out there that allows these decisions to just come very naturally in alignment with it. They feel very effortless and just very, of course. So first and foremost, find a way of reclaiming that outer wildness. Another thing I'll just recommend actually, as well as the nature spot, is connecting with a special tree. And that could be one in your garden. I actually sort of started with a bit of a starter tree that's a silver birch in my garden that I still have a real connection with, but I ended up gravitating to a really old oak at the top of a hill that I walk the dogs to. And the relationship I've created with that tree over the last year or so, it genuinely has become one of the most important relationships in my life. And I know that sounds weird to say. And as I say it, I think it's so funny that I actually feel okay to say that. And I don't care if you think I'm mad for saying it. I've had some deeply, deeply profound experiences huge realizations, big shifts. I probably spent more time in tears by that tree than maybe anywhere else. It's been incredible. So that's another thing that I would really recommend. Find your tree. And I think the first step that I found really helpful was to almost like put myself and my own needs aside and just try and get the tree. By say get, just how you try and get another human being in conversation, get the tree, understand the tree, what's going on for the tree, start there. And from that place, I found everything else just happened really, really naturally. And it's probably one for a different show, but I could tell you stories of things that have happened with me at that tree that are beyond rational understanding, like pure magic. So really, really recommend that. What else? So inner wildness, the whole idea of inner wildness. And again, I think first and foremost, this can just come very, I wouldn't say effortlessly, but simply and naturally from an underlying intentional commitment just to live from your soul. The point where I made that agreement with myself that from now on, I'm living a soul-led life, that made everything that came from that point possible. Even the things that came into my awareness, I don't think would have come into my awareness if I hadn't made that intention or that agreement first. So I would say that's the starting point, to even just recognize that you've got a desire to move in this direction and just make that commitment to yourself. Just honor yourself enough to make that intention, that agreement. And then from there, you'll notice the nudges and the intuition that you're going to get. And I think first and foremost, and I must have talked about this loads in previous shows, firstly, just allow yourself to listen. You don't have to take heed. You don't have to take action. That very much is powerful and can calm. But first of all, just allow it to be safe to listen. That in itself can be a really powerful permission to give yourself. And then secondly, find ways, and again, I'm sure like magic, these will come into your awareness because it just happens that way, but find ways to create that inner wildness. So for example, that's why we lead things like Wake the Wild Masculine, Wake the Wild Feminine. They're very much about rewilding your mind and body in order for that kind of inner wildness to come through. We're obviously not the only people doing this kind of work. I've recommended before the book Soulcraft by the amazing author, Bill Plotkin, his work with Animus, where they take people out on group vision fasts or vision quests, are another really gorgeous way. There's lots of ways. You'll find a path that resonates with you. But I see over and over again that there's definitely progress we can make along this path on our own. And there seems to be something essential about us doing this with others too. I really see there's real power in us circling with other women if we're a woman, and other men if we're a man, that it's a medicine that we just don't seem to be able to invoke on our own. So I think whatever you choose, and it's not to say everything you choose has to be with others, but I would say try to make that part of your path, because there is some magic there that I've just not seen is available elsewhere. I'd actually written down a whole bunch of quotes from our friend Clarissa Pinkola Restes that I've just ended up talking myself and not reading them, but I'm going to read a couple now because I feel like this is quite a nice place to transition to. And this again, her work is primarily, if not solely, with women. So she's going to refer to women, but everything here is pretty much applicable to men too. And then there are the cravings. Ola, a woman may crave to be near water or be belly down, her face in the earth, smelling the wild smell. She might have to drive into the wind. She may have to plant something, pull things out of the ground or put them into the ground. She may have to knead and bake, wrapped in dough up to her elbows. She may have to trek into the hills, leaping from rock to trying out her voice against the mountain. She may need hours of starry nights where the stars are like face powder spilt on a black marble floor. She may feel she'll die if she doesn't dance naked in a thunderstorm, sit in perfect silence, return home, ink-stained, paint-stained, tear-stained, moon-stained. So I guess if those words are creating something in you, some kind of resonance, some kind of pull, some kind of call, I would say the path of the wild is for you. And I'm going to leave you with a final quote from our friend Clarissa. And this, I think, is just like the best advice ever. The most important thing is to hold on or hold out for your creative life, for your solitude, for your time to be and do, for your very life. I felt quite emotional reading that. And that really, I think, speaks to recognizing this is important. You know, we get one life, at least here in this particular body that we're in right now, and you're not going to get another chance at this one. And I know that moment where I made the agreement to live a soul-led life, that has meant I need to prepare to make sacrifices, make choices, express desires that allow that to happen. Sometimes they can look selfish. Sometimes they can look like I'm self-indulgent, self-obsessed, weird. And going back to what Clarissa said, this is essential. This is essential. If we want to get to the end of our lives and feel like we've led a life of meaning, a life of soul, a life of richness, a life of freedom, we have to be willing to prioritize and commit to that. Okay. I think I'm done on this topic. Any questions at all, let me know. And what shall I leave you with? So, of course, if you are feeling the call in this direction and you're a woman, sadly, we don't have the equivalent available for men yet. Maybe we will. Ask if you'd like something similar. But if you're feeling the call in this direction and you're a woman, unraveling the body could be perfect for you. I won't go into all the details as I did earlier. Suffice to say, this is something completely new. It's a much, much, much lower level of investment than anything I think we've done live ever, certainly for years. And it's kind of intentionally made to make it an easier step. It doesn't require this kind of huge jump, huge commitment, huge kind of leaning into your fear. It's intentionally made as a kind of a lighter and yet still powerful step along this path. So go check that out. And that's at primalhappiness.co/unravel. That's unravel with one L. And yes, it'd be gorgeous to see you in our first session in May, whatever date that is. And you can have a look also at other ways to work with us at our Go Deeper page, which is primalhappiness.co/go deeper. And we've currently got, obviously, Awaken Wild Masculine and Awaken Wild Feminine have now closed. Both have sold out. If you are feeling called to something that is really going deep in the way that I've described, register your interest, because I suspect the next time we'll be leading those circles will be in the autumn, and they do sell out fast. So if you know that you want to be in the next one, register your interest and you'll be one of the first people to hear, so you can jump in as soon as we open it. And then we've also got Waking the Wild Sovereign, which is really, really gorgeous, deep, intimate work with both myself and Jonathan. You can read all about that at, I won't give separate URLs for all this. If you go to our Go Deeper page, you'll find that. And we also work with couples in partnership. So you can have a look at all of that on our Go Deeper page. What else? So if you are listening to this live and you don't already listen to our podcast, go check that out. There are something like 273 possibly episodes on all manner of topics, all very much in alignment with what I've been talking about today. And that's at primalhappiness.co/podcast. And if you're not a member of our group and you like the kind of thing I've been talking about today, it's gorgeous. It's starting to become something that we really envisioned at the start, a place that people can ask questions and share experiences or articles, all on this topic of really reclaiming our wildness. And so really wonderful collection of people to be part of. And that's at facebook.com/group/primalhappiness. Is that everything? I think so. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful day. Lots of love. Mwah. Bye-bye. So we're done for this month. Are you going to choose into rewilding yourself and walking the path of the soul? If so, I'd love to know how you're getting on with the practices I invited you into. The best way to do that is to head on over to the Primal Happiness Facebook group and post there. The link for that is facebook.com/group/primalhappiness. And I always love to have your feedback, questions, and topic suggestions. And the group is the best place to post those too. Of course, if you'd like to join me live for the next show, I would love to have you. Just like our Facebook page, and that's at facebook.com/primalhappiness. And you can watch out for the show airing live on the first Friday of every month at 10 a.m. in English time. So currently GMT, I think it's turning to BST at the end of this month. If you'd like to get the notes and links for everything we spoke about this week, hop on over to the show notes, and they're at primalhappiness.co/episode 274. And women, if you're feeling your body calling for that unraveling in a beautiful and safe space, please do go check out all the juicy details, and they're at primalhappiness.co/unravel. Come and join us for the first, I'm about to say the next, but it's the very first Unraveling the Body, which starts in May. And if you don't want to miss out on next week's episode, head on over to Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, or your Android or iOS app of choice and hit subscribe. That way you'll get each episode delivered straight to your device as if by magic as soon as it comes out. Thank you so much for listening. You've been wonderful. Catch you again next Tuesday.